Alright, today we are mounting a couple fish that I've never actually done before. These are my first couple of saltwater fish that I'm going to be doing, so bear with me here. What we got is a couple of pinfish. Those of you who fish in saltwater or the oceans, probably pretty familiar with these little guys. They're pretty notorious for stealing bait. I don't get a chance to fish down in the ocean very much, so I took the opportunity to take a couple of these home. And we're going to try to mount them up here, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. Alright, so we have our fish here. First thing we're going to do is we are going to trace them onto this cardboard here, and that's going to be for our foam carving for later. So we're just going to trace the outside of the fish. Alright, so we just traced the outside of the fish. Like I said, that's going to be, we're going to trace that, when we're going to cut it out, we're going to trace that onto our foam. And then our foam's going to go inside of our fish once we have it all carved out. Our next step, we are going to just cut a straight line, starting with the gill, the tip of the gill, all the way down to the tail, just a straight line. Alright, so kind of like that. Next thing, we're going to take our knife and we're just going to work under that cut that we just made, and we're going to work our way up all the way along the side of the fish, and then do the same thing on the other side. We're just going to get right under the skin. Just be very careful, take your time so you don't cut through your fish. If you do, you're going to have to try to repair it for later, so this is a part where you really have to take your time. Alright, so we cut just under the skin. You can see all the meat's still in there yet. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little wire cutters here, and we are just going to cut through the backbone by the tail. And then we're going to kind of do that all the way up. We're just going to take the meat out in chunks. Just cutting through the backbone. What I have here is a little scraping fleshing tool. You can buy these online at a lot of taxidermy shops. What this is really meant for is just to scrape all that meat out of there. So we're pretty much just going to dig this in there. And if you can even pull out the back. It kind of comes out in chunks like we cut. Just be very careful, don't just pull and rip at anything, just take your time. So we're just taking every little piece out. All we're trying to do here is clean all the meat out and save the skin. That's pretty much all we want, the skin. We're going to end up taking the eyes out. So all we're doing right now is we're just taking our time and scraping all that meat out of the inside of the fish. And I just ripped through my fish. See, I wasn't really taking my time here. I ripped right through the bottom of it, but we're going to see if we can fix that come when we stuff it. So that could be interesting. I'm not a professional taxidermist. I've actually just kind of learned to do this online. But in doing other fish, I've actually ripped tails completely off the fish and still saved them. So they can still be worked with. Alright, we're just continuing to scrape all that meat out of there. We're going to take the eyes out as well. We're also going to get the cheek meat inside the cheek of the fish. A lot of bigger fish will have more, but it's good to just get every little piece of meat out that you can, so we're going to try to get some out of there. Alright, so I got my fish cleaned up pretty good. Might look at a little bit more. Got the eyes out. He's starting to look pretty good. So we're pretty much set to go there. Our next step is to We're going to go ahead and put it in a mixture of 50% denatured alcohol and then 50% water. And we just need to let our fish skin soak for a couple of days, and that kind of gets the skin a little tougher and leathery. But this guy's pretty much set to go in. We'll let him sit for a couple days and we'll come back and make our foam carving. Alright, so I have my cardboard cutout that I traced of the fish. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to trace this cardboard cutout onto this piece of carving foam. Alright, just like that. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to carve out the shape of the fish. Once we're done with that, we can put this inside the fish, we're going to sew it up, and we'll be on our way. Alright, our carving is done. We have our fish here that was soaking in the solution I mentioned earlier for a couple of days. What we're going to do now is we're going to put the carving inside the fish and sew it up. Carving doesn't fit exactly right. A good thing to use is just a little bit of modeling clay. And then you can kind of move it around the way you want to when your carving is inside the fish, so there's no gaps. Like I said, we did rip through there on the bottom, but I'm hoping that we can use some of our epoxy sculpt and kind of recreate that, fill that area in where we ripped through. Alright, so we have our carving inside the fish. I sort of patched this up for now, kind of to keep it from getting any worse. So our next step is to sew the back side of the fish together. Alright, fish is sewed up good enough. Now our next step, what we're going to do is we're going to pin the fins the way that we want them to look. So I just got a bunch of little pins here, and you're going to really just manipulate them however you want. I like to keep them kind of flared up. Alright, our fins are pinned the way we want them. So next I'm going to be placing the eye of the fish. So all we're really going to do here is just take a little bit of our modeling clay, put it in that open eye socket there. Alright, eyes in. Our next step, we are going to take some Mod Podge and some just clear white tissue paper, and we're going to get the back side of the fins with this Mod Podge here. It's just going to give the fins a little more durability and sturdiness. So I'm just going to put a little bit on, I'm going to put a layer on, and then we're going to lay a piece of tissue paper on there. And then we're going to put another layer on after we put the tissue paper on. We're going to let these fins dry a little bit, and then we have some clear siliconized acrylic caulk, and we will just put that over all the fins. That really makes them durable and tough, even a little bit flexible. But once these are dry, we'll add that caulk, and then in a couple of days we'll be ready to paint. Alright, last couple steps before I get to paint the fish. I just put on some of my clear siliconized caulk onto the fins. This is going to make our fins a little bit tougher and a little bit rubbery. That's still drying a bit, but what I want to fix now is we're going to go in and put some epoxy sculpt in here and try to close this up a little bit from when I cut it earlier when I was doing my initial taking the meat out of the fish. We're also going to add a little bit of epoxy to some areas that have kind of shrunk, so you can see the top of the head, kind of shrunk in a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit around the mouth. I think that'll be it. Alright, so I put some of that epoxy sculpt on here. Next, what you want to do is you want to add a little bit of detail, so you want to really show that looks like there's actually scales there. If you don't try to draw in some scales or have a scale tool, this is really going to stick out and it's going to look a little strange. So we're going to do our best and try to draw in some scales with this needle. You really don't have to go in too deep, just on the outside. It's definitely not professionally done, but that's going to make a big difference in whether you can really see this the best. It still might show up a little bit, but I'm not too worried about it. Alright, so I got my epoxy sculpt on the spots that shrunk a little bit. I got it on the top of the head, near the mouth, and then we had that spot we had to fix. So what we need to do is just let this sit for about 24 hours. And then our last step is going to be to actually paint the fish. Alright, last step is to actually paint the fish, so let's get to it. Alright, so basically I'm done with the fish. Unfortunately, on the last step I mistakenly grabbed a can of spray adhesive instead of my clear coat. I started spraying that on there and really screwed up my fish. So I did what I could to save him, but he really didn't turn out the way I wanted. But we'll just call that a lesson learned. That spray adhesive is going to be hidden away from now on when I'm painting my fish. But otherwise, all the steps went good. I just really screwed up at the end, but thanks for watching.